Hello foliage family, my name is Romani, the mother of leafy boys, and today I want to share with you my favourite plant dupes for those plants that are really hard to find or rare, expensive, or even those ones that are just really hard to keep alive. So as a collector, I have accumulated quite a few plants over the years. And through that journey, I have come across a couple of really interesting planty dupes. By dupes, I mean plants that I would say are more than likely going to be cheaper and easier to grow than their more expensive or harder to come by counterparts. It's not to say that these plants I'm going to show you today are necessarily like super cheap, but they're definitely going to be easier to care for, I think is the main goal. That if you get this plant, you're going to get a similar aesthetic and it's going to be a little bit nicer on your wallet at the end of the day and a little bit easier for you to grow. But without further ado, let's actually start looking at the plants. You can already see a lot of them behind me. That's a little teaser of what's to come. We're going to start with the rare plant and then I'm going to show you the dupe. So the first plant I want to show you as the rare plant today is the Philodendron islanii. Now a lot of the information I have about this plant has come from Planting with Ashley. She's a great YouTuber, but apparently it is quite difficult to grow. It is a real big pain to propagate, especially if you don't air layer at first. I have yet to experience those issues mainly because it is very fresh in my collection. It is very new and I'm very scared even holding it. But look at that beautiful variegation. I get it. I know why we want this plant. I know why we're seeking it in our collection. I don't understand why it costs potentially thousands. I did not pay that much. But I know that it is currently being sold for quite a hefty sum of money, and there is whispers that it's going to go back up in price very shortly. If that's the case, not so great. Not so great, because it is beautiful and I understand why you want it, which is why I'm going to show you a beautiful dupe that if you want a plant that looks like this in your collection, here is a cheaper version. I'm going to preface, keep in mind, some of these are being sold for thousands of dollars. The one that I'm going to show to you is not necessarily cheap as chips, but it is certainly cheaper than this plant. And here is my dupe for the islanii. It is a Philodendron blizzard or a Philodendron giganteum blizzard, and I think it is pretty similar in its aesthetic. I'll bring you a little bit closer to the leaves, but I feel like the coloring and the way that the variegation is on these leaves is very similar. This is a really highly variegated one, but I think it has the same vibes, the same energy. Now, these are being sold from anywhere from like $300 to as cheap as like $80 to $60. I know I sold one recently for $80, so you can get it for quite a lot cheaper than the thousands of dollars that people are paying for the ilsemanii. I think it's ilsemanii, it's one of those two. But again, I did not pay that much for this one. I'm very lucky, but in comparison, those are the same pattern. Can you not see how those leaves are so super similar in their variegation? So similar. So you can get it for a lot cheaper, and I believe these are coming down in price as well as people are chopping and propping and getting more of them. So the more people that chop and prop and sell them, the cheaper the price is going to get, which is great. So it is easy to chop and prop too. It is really easy to chop and prop. They grow aerial roots like nobody's business. So I've literally just chopped the top off the plant, no air layering, nothing like that, not even popped it into water afterwards. I literally just chopped the top off, took the aerial roots, put it into soil, and hoped that the plant gods would thank me for it later. And you know what? They did. That's how this one grew. Went green for a bit because it wasn't happy that I deadheaded it, but thanked me later. So, also don't be afraid if you get one that's slightly lower variegated. So The one that I got was kind of really low in variegation. It didn't look great. Probably like this leaf. I think when I got it, it looked very similar to this leaf here. Just like bits of variegation. I was super sad. I paid a lot of money for it. And I was really disappointed that variegation looked so low. I chucked it in really high light and it started to variegate really beautifully. I'll show you. This is the mother plant. I just poked my eye. So don't mind me like violently assaulting myself with a plant. This is the mother plant. It's also beautifully variegated, but it's a lot more minty. Can you focus on not me? There we go. It's a lot more minty in its variegation than the other one I've shown you, but it's absolutely beautiful either way. I love both of them, which is why I couldn't get rid of both of them. I had to keep, you know, I couldn't just have one. I had to have both because I love the minty, but I also love the really stark white. But they are both the same plant. They both came from the exact same plant. This is a little pup. No, sorry, this is the main one. And then that was like a little pup that came off of this plant that was super low variegation. Then I dead cut it off, like just literally pulled it off the main plant, popped it in soil, and then it started becoming this like beautiful, super white variegated plant. So it is worth it to get these, even if they're like slightly lower in variegation. The next one, I only have a really small version of it as well. I think a big difference that you're going to see is that usually the more rare plant is a lot smaller in my collection, whether the cheaper plant is always much bigger for obvious reasons. But this one is my Anthurium Regale. It is a little baby. I have it growing in pon at the moment, and it seems to be growing, you know, going along, chugging along, but I know that this one is definitely a problem child, and I'm probably in for a lot of problems as it grows and gets bigger and bigger. Lots of things like the leaves tearing or crinkling or just not looking great if it's not getting the right conditions, like the perfect right conditions. And they're also quite expensive. Pure regales can be quite expensive. Hundreds of dollars, not quite as expensive as the ilsemanii is, but it still, you know, takes a fair whack out of your pocket, and they are harder to come by as a pure regale. My dupe for this one is, I would still call it a dupe. I would still call it a dupe. Let's bring it out. So it's still an Anthurium, but it is an Anthurium Regale cross crystallinum. And I picked this one up for like 20 bucks from Bunnings. It was damaged and looked gross and looked like it was gonna die. So they had it on the sale table for pretty cheap, and I brought it home, and it didn't even need nursing back to health. I just watered it, and it's been fine ever since. So I feel like, yes, it still has more of that like crystallinum look in its veination, but I feel like it ticks the box of that like veiny, velvety, heart-shaped leaf. It's growing big pretty quickly, so I imagine it's going to get to be quite a big leafed plant over time, which is I think why we love the Regale so much, is because of the big heart-shaped leaf. But it doesn't seem to be as picky. So I would say this would be, you know, if they're both on the table and you were just looking for a certain aesthetic or style, you're probably better off going with a cross than the pure Regale. A lot of the crosses do make them look quite different. So you have to be careful. Like Luxurians definitely takes on the Luxurians over the Regale, because I have a Luxurians cross Regale, and it's definitely more Luxurians than Regale. But the crystallinum, I feel specifically has a closer link to the Regal look, in my opinion. All right, the next one, I'm going to be addressing the elephant in the room. My Alocasia Jackyln. But it is so heavy that I cannot pick it up and bring it to you. So I'm just going to zoom the camera in a little. Give me a moment. So this beautiful plant here is my Alocasia Jackyln, and it is a big, beautiful, lush plant, but I can guarantee you it is very hard to get to this point of having such a big Jackyln. And there are multiple stems in this pot, which is why it looks so lush and big. So do not be fooled. It is not an easy plant to grow, even though I have quite a large one. It is quite a picky little friend that we have here. It is much easier to grow in certain climates. I am very, very lucky to live in Australia, Queensland, specifically Queensland. I'm very sorry to everyone over in Melbourne or Canberra. Very sorry. But because of where I live in Queensland, this plant has a lot easier of a time growing. If you live somewhere that is not very humid at all, or if you live somewhere where it is rainy, really cold, it's going to be a bit more difficult for you to get it to grow big and beautiful like you've seen some of them grow on the internet. So I have a dupe for you. I have something that I feel gives you a very similar vibe, but is not an Alocasia. The other two dupes I've shown you have been within the same genus. This isn't even an Alocasia. So I feel like it gives similar vibes. Give me a moment. We're zooming back out. Nice. Okay, so my dupe for you is actually a Syngonium. Hear me out. This is a Syngonium Steramachii, and I feel like it gives you very similar vibes to the Jackyln. Here is its leaves. I feel that its leaves have a lot of that ripply texture. I'm going to bring you on an angle. Oh, there you go. Look at that. It has beautiful ripply textured leaves. The leaves get quite large very easily on this plant. They can get even bigger. And what's even better, they are a low light plant. Low light does not mean no light. I'm looking at you. Does not mean no light. But it is currently growing in my bedroom, which the curtains are very often closed on. It does not get a lot of light throughout the day. There's probably a couple of hours throughout the day where it gets like decent light exposure, like medium light at the most, and it's fine. It's growing big, it's growing beautiful. It does not actually like to get direct sunlight or even bright indirect light. It tends to get really faded and it stops growing in my experience growing it. And it's just a super easy, chill growing plant. I have mine growing up a moss pole, but you could definitely grow it without a moss pole. I have a sweet spot. I have a special addiction to moss poles. That doesn't have any medication to stop that yet. So I love the Steramachii. It does not need to be on a moss pole. It can grow up just like a stake. It is a climber. I think that's the biggest difference between this and the Jackyln is, yes, it's a climber, so it will want some form of support. That might just be a stick or a metal stake or something like that. But if you're just looking for something that gives you like that really, I don't know if you'd say edgy, but like cool jungle vibe, I think this is fairly close. If we put them side by side, they're like sisters, not twins, like eyebrows, right? I feel like it's fairly similar. Close enough. The next rare plant that I have a dupe for is the Monstera Albo. And again, I love this plant. I really do. I absolutely love this plant. But again, do not be fooled by how beautiful she looks today. Look at her. And the new leaf. Look at that. Shut up. Shut up. Just like witness her. Anyway, don't be fooled. Monstera albos are prone to browning. They will brown their white variegation if they are upset. They are still holding their price when it comes to being expensive. You might be looking at about, you know, in the 100 to 200 range for small ones if they've got good variegation. You might get cheaper if you get ones that don't have very good variegation, like quite low variegation, larger chunks of green than this one here. But definitely coming down in price, but still not something that you can sneeze at and not something that is super duper easy to find in stores. It's definitely getting there, but it's not quite there yet, which is why I have a dupe for you today. This dupe has actually been in the background the whole time. You might have seen it, and it is incredibly hard to get out from its position. So again, we're going to have to do some zooming magic. Do you see it? Isn't she glorious? Isn't she beautiful? This is my Epipremnum pinnatum Albo, and I think she is just chef's kiss, the most beautiful, stunning plant you've ever seen in your entire life. Now, this is a climber, very similar to the Monstera, two separate genus. So that's a Monstera, this one is an Epipremnum, and it's a lot cheaper. I bought this one for like around $15 to $20. I can't actually remember the exact price that I paid for this plant, but around $15 to $20 for a small plant. Small meaning it had small leaves. It definitely was bushy. It had multiple stems. It just looked like a lush trailing pot when I bought it. So definitely not small as in like a cutting. It was a bushy plant. I read that you could grow it trailing or climbing, and that climbing it could get really big and it could fenestrate. So I was like, okay, let's give it a go. Chucked it on a moss pole, and this is her today about 5 years later. So it did take a while to get to this point, but I would say that it's gotten to this point faster, as in it's gotten to like this big leafed size, a lot faster than Monstera. If I was to grow a Monstera from the size of the leaf it was to this point, I would feel like it'd have to be a lot older. Or maybe it needs a lot more light. It's probably that. I think my Monstera wants a lot more light than I'm currently providing it, which says a lot considering how much light I do give it currently. But this plant sits in the corner of this room. The window is over there, so it is like in the corner nooked beside the window. But it's probably getting medium light, and sometimes it will get dappled direct light on its leaves sometimes. But it definitely can live in much lower light, which is why I love it so much, because it wants for nothing. It will just grow for you. It will grow pretty much wherever you put it. It might get bigger faster if you put it in higher light. The variegation doesn't brown in my experience. I've had a couple of issues with parts of the leaves going brown, but it doesn't matter if it's white or green. It was going brown because it was underwatered. So that's just a my bad. That's got nothing to do with the variegation. That's just me kind of not caring about the care for this plant because it's not picky. It's not pest prone. It's not one that's prone to getting rot or anything like that. It's just super easy and chill, and I feel like they're a lot easier to come by now. Like I feel like they're a lot easier to find in like your big box stores. However, I'm always going to suggest getting them from nurseries because support your local businesses, okay? Support your local businesses. But this beautiful plant has just the most beautiful fenestrations, the most beautiful variegation, and I feel like it gives a very similar vibe. It's longer rather than round, but if you're looking for something that has fenestration and big chunky white variegation that's not going to break the bank, I think this one's the plant for you. The final plant that I want to show you is not one that's actually necessarily expensive at all. This is a plant that you probably could pick up fairly cheaply, but I know a lot of people really struggle to keep this plant alive. Unfortunately, once again, it is way too big to fit into the frame or for me to physically hold up. So we're going to have to turn you over here so that you can see it. Hello, so we are over on this side now where you can see my beautiful variegated Boston fern. It's also known as a tiger fern. And of course, this is like a very wanted plant. It has that beautiful, like trailing, cottagecore kind of vibe. This one is quite massive. It's very, very big, and I think I can say that that has got a lot to do with the fact that it is in a self-watering pot. Hopefully you can see the pot that's inside of that. And that has helped me a lot to make sure that it it stays watered is to make sure that I have it in that self-watering pot and that I'm keeping that little reservoir going for the plant at all times. But overall, I do know that it is quite a difficult plant to keep happy. And mine, you know, mine also has little browning bits. I'm constantly, you know, losing leaves to the brown, but at the end of the day, it is such a big plant that you don't really notice that. But if you're growing it really small, or you don't have it in a self-watering pot, or you're just not a very good waterer, then it can be a really hard plant to keep alive. However, I do suggest if you want to try Boston fern, chuck it in a self-watering pot and give it a go, because I mean, Boston ferns are just beautiful, aren't they? They're like every grandma's dream plant, right? This is a plant that if you went to your grandma's house and she was growing one on the veranda, you thought, wow, grandma's house is pretty cool. Or was I weird? It's possible that that is not a normal thought for a child to have. I don't know. Self-reflection. But I genuinely think it is a beautiful plant and it is worth a go. But if you've been burnt a million times by the Boston fern, I do have a dupe for you. And this is the dupe for a fern, or a big Boston fern. It is called a fernleaf cactus. You can probably guess why, because it looks very similar to a fern. It has massive big leaves as well. This is my smaller cutting. I have a massive big fernleaf cactus out on my veranda. I mean, absolutely massive. It rivals the size of the fern that I've just shown you. But you can see it dangles down. It has that like flowing, long, draping sort of vibe that the fern has, but it is definitely a lot more sturdy than a fern is. It won't get the crisping or browning if it's underwatered. In fact, it is currently drier than the Sahara Desert inside of this pot because I continuously forget to water it because I'm actually a chronic overwaterer. So to compensate, I simply forget that plants exist, and then I remember and then I water them, which means I then become an underwaterer for some plants. And this is one of them, because it is actually better to underwater your plants than it is to overwater them in my experience, because it is more likely that your plant is going to get like a little bit crispy and a little bit sad, but it will live. Whether if you overwater it, you're going to be dealing with root rot, and then all the roots are gone, it's got nothing to survive on, and then it's just mush. So it is probably better for you if you just underwater it rather than overwater it. At least that's what I tell myself over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. But it's a beautiful plant. It honestly is. It's super easy. It's not prone to having any sort of pests, and they are relatively cheap as well. I would say that the prices of these two plants is actually probably the only ones on the list that are in the same category price-wise, but they're definitely on opposite ends of the scale when it comes to care. Even though it's a jungle cactus, it doesn't necessarily need a monstrous amount of light. Ferns also require high light, so if you're looking for something to go in your collection, you know, if you were going to pick a fern, you're probably going to have the same lighting requirements that you need for this particular plant. You're just less likely for it to crisp and die. I can actually see so many babies on this plant. Can you see? Right there, that's a little baby. And that there is also a little baby. And then I think there, I don't know if you can see it, that there is another little baby. Is there any more? There's another one there. Oh my gosh. I'm a mother of leafy boys. Oh my God. I didn't even realize it was growing so much right now. That's so exciting. But it lives in the back corner over here. So the window is all the way on the other side. That's where the light is for this particular plant. And it still seems to be happy, growing quite big and lush. And obviously is very happy considering it's growing like 6 new little baby stems at the moment. So proud of this plant. Look at it go. Thumbnail. Anyway. Alright, and that is it for today's video. These were my favorite dupes for those rare or hard to grow plants. If you have any other dupes that you can think of, please chuck them in the comments below. I would love to hear your sneaky little dupes that you have found along the way. Please make sure that you do all the YouTubey things. It helps the algorithm. Like, subscribe, do all the little fun things if you would like more plant content. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!